Back in the cold winter of 1991 in Kashmir, in the twin villages of Kunan and Poshpora of Kupwara, something shocking happened. The Indian Army, which is regarded as providing safety and security to Kashmiris, gang raped more than 70 Kashmiri women. Even though the Indian government is pushing back against these claims, several human rights organizations, including Human Rights Watch, have found these claims to be true. Now, even after more than 30 years, these women are still in fight for justice. Welcome to the second episode of Gendering Conflict, War on Women and Others. In this episode, we will dive deep into how women's bodies are being used as a site of violence and how women fight back. There is an elaborate report by BBC which states, quote, "It was 23rd February 1991, the people of Kunan, a tiny village in Indian-administered Kashmir's Kupwara district, were retiring for the night after a cold winter day. Zuni and Zarina, not their real names, were also getting ready to go to bed when they heard a series of loud knocks on the door. At the time, India had started a large-scale military operation in an attempt to control a popular armed insurgency against Indian rule in Kashmir. So-called cordon and search operations, locally called crackdowns, were becoming routine and still persist to this day." Unquote. It was during one such cordon and search operation that Indian Army raided the villages of Kunan and Poshpora to catch hold of militants who, as per Army's assumptions, were hiding in these two tiny villages. But what unfolded was another shocking incident of how women's bodies are weaponized by men in power to sustain systems of patriarchy and to torture the people under oppression. Shockingly, more than 70 women, including minors and elders, were raped. Quote, "Minor girls, those dumb and deaf, the physically handicapped, and the pregnant women were not spared either. Mothers were raped in front of their daughters. Grandmothers and their granddaughters were raped in the same room." Unquote, mentions the book Do You Remember Kunan Poshpora? It is clear that women's bodies face sexual, economic, and systematic abuse because of the power imbalance between men and women, particularly in the times of war, conflict, and occupation. It's also really unfortunate how women's bodies can be so easily objectified and mistreated, often used as a means to gain an advantage or win in conflicts. The Kunan and Poshpora incident is not the only incident that has happened in India's past. Several other incidents shed light on the dirty history of gendered violence in India. Remember Thangjam Manorama, a 32-year-old woman from Manipur who was killed by Indian Army in 2004? Although these are two entirely different kinds of conflicted lands, still Kashmir and Manipur are very much alike. Do you know how? Because both of these lands have a history and records of torture, abuse, and oppression by Indian Army. Manorama went through unimaginable suffering at the hands of the Indian Army before they took her life. There have been several protests against the Indian Army in Manipur due to the failure to bring justice. One of the remarkable moments of the protest was the iconic, quote, "Indian Army rape us" moment. Around 30 Manipuri women gathered naked around Assam Rifles headquarters in Imphal, holding the banner that says, quote, "Indian Army rape us", unquote. This is one of the strongest and most visible images of strength and resistance against gendered violence and how women have made significant efforts to fight back. Similarly, even after 30 years, these women are still out there fighting for justice. Back in 2013, a group of young Kashmiri women scholars started an initiative to reopen the investigation into the Kunan and Poshpora incident. Natasha Rathar, one of the women who filed for reopening of the case and also one of the authors of Do You Remember Kunan and Poshpora, said to BBC, quote, "This was such a big case of mass rape in which those affected had actually come forward and had demonstrated so much courage. And there was a huge body of evidence too. So we felt that this case needed to be reopened." Unquote. Despite the lack of justice, Kashmiri women continue to commemorate the 23rd of February as Kashmir Resistance Day. Alright, let's move to the pretty present. It has been more than 2 years since the ethnic violence erupted between the dominant Meiteis and the lowered Kukis in Manipur. The ethnic violence has claimed more than hundreds of lives, displaced more than 60,000 people, and has shown the most horrific acts of sexual violence in the region. Back in August 2023, UN experts reached out to India about what's happening in Manipur and requested some urgent replies. In some of the cases they have identified, quote, "Women and girls have reportedly been attacked in their homes, dragged in the street, tortured or severely beaten before being raped and killed. One of the victims was allegedly hackled to death. In some of these cases, the bodies of the victims are yet to be found or recuperated." Unquote. The violence against women in Manipur showcase how often women fall prey to patriarchal violence. Women fight back, and when they do not only dismantle the oppressor, but they also destabilize the unequal power balance between men and women. They destroy the hegemonic patriarchal institutions and systems. In one such brave example, women in Kashmir referred to as half-widows of men targeted through forced disappearances can be seen in public raising slogans and chanting songs against the oppressive state that has perpetrated social, economic, and cultural violence against them by making their sons, fathers, brothers, and husbands targets of forced disappearance. The women have formed a sort of resistance movement against the violence the state has perpetrated and orchestrated against them by forcing them to live the lives of economic and social isolation because their men are nowhere to be found. Women have been standing up against the powerful Indian army in areas like Assam, Manipur, Nagaland, and Kashmir, to name a few. They have been working hard to get rid of harsh laws like AFSPA, Armed Force Special Powers Act, that allows the Indian Army to operate without restrictions in these conflict areas. Iram Sharmila, known as the Iron Lady of Manipur, had one of the longest battles against AFSPA. Sharmila went on these long hunger strikes to protest against the harsh AFSPA in the area. Women fight back, and they have been doing this for years. They break the hegemonic power structures of patriarchy and reduce the patriarchal systems to ashes. Alright, the episode ends here. How caste might function as a source of conflict between people will be explored in the next episode. For now, let us know what do you think about the series down in the comments, and stay tuned.